Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Aurora. This class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the shape known as the flying rainbow lasagna. Today is August 1st, oh my goodness, and this is lesson 7 in the teaching cycle. So that means that this live lecture refers to lesson 7. This is the level 1, and every week, the past 2 weeks, I've been like, level 1 just morphs out into, it spills over its boundaries into level 2. So this week I'm going to be super conscientious and make sure that I do level 1 and actually get to level 2. So level 1 refers to lesson 7, which is all about the rainbow journey and the singularity. So we're going to talk all about Newtonian physics, Einsteinian or quantum physics, the different viewpoints, where the cosmology or story of the cosmos and its origins, where we are now, and kind of like where we are moving into the future, flying rainbow lasagna. And level 2 will be all about an advanced understanding of the Merkaba and using it for interdimensional travel. All right, and also, all right, that's just talking in the chat. And also, I know if Pedro's in here, Pedro had some very specific questions that he asked. Hello, good to see you, my friend. So also, if you want to start off with those questions that you asked me in Messenger, because what I love to do is when people ask me a question that refers to that everyone can benefit from hearing the answer, I'm like, let's talk about that in class, because these are important topics to talk about. So if now is a good time, or you can wait until after the presentation, whatever is good. But if you wanted to, I'm happy to begin with that. Let me just drink some water. Oh, okay, good. So, and I'm just pouring more water. So first of all, the pesky occupiers of the interstices. Let's talk about this, and let me grab my little sculpture. Hold on a second. You know I'm organized. I've got it right back here, everyone. And a few more little things have broken off of it. I have to like make new sculptures. Those pesky occupiers of the interstices. When I point to this membrane over here, and this is the membrane of death, and it's supposed to be a place that there's no consciousness there. No one is supposed to live there. So there are actual like artifacts out of place, or energy out of place. So I've been calling them these pesky occupiers, or the turds who refuse to flush. And Pedro is the acronym creator, and he created this little word, P-O-O-T-I-S. The pesky occupiers of the interstices, and in the plural of that would be pooties. So now we've got this funny little word for them, these pooties. He asks, if the question was if I could show or draw or tell about what they look like compared to my paintings. That's a really awesome question. Okay, so first of all, we have to talk about two different types of perception, the anthropomorphic and the abstract. When you see these paintings that I have, and mostly what I focus my mental energy on perceiving, it's the abstract realm. Oh, that's interesting. Dominic is saying that he expects that the pooties would look like spiders. So, you know, mostly when I use my inner eye, I'm using it like a higher dimensional telescope. I want to look at abstraction, which is kind of like, it's like the mathematical code that all of this anthropomorphic experience is based upon. So rarely do I, you know, with my inner vision, see something that's like a 3-dimensional room, like with a chair, with a person sitting in it. Like, it doesn't usually look like that to me. Although it is a world, that's a realm that has depth and it has form. It's not just like looking at a flat place. It's like looking at a place that actually has depth, but the things that are there are abstractions. They're polygons and colors and lines, and they're moving and everything like that. So when I see those pesky occupiers of the interstices, I see them as like an interference or an intermediary, so an obstacle coming between myself and that abstract realm. So when my physical flesh eyes are open and I perceive those pesky occupiers, sometimes it looks like a floater, like if you've ever seen floaters, you know, they're the junk that floats around in the aqueous central jelly stuff that's inside of your eyeball. There are actual naturally occurring fibers that exist there since birth, because you had a little blood vessel that dissolved and is in there, and it makes these floating shapes. So those are natural floating shapes. Sometimes I see unnatural floating shapes that are sometimes in my peripheral vision, but sometimes they go right across my vision. And the reason why I attribute them to being these pesky occupiers is that they always coincide with an intrusive thought or something that brings up a negative emotion, like one of those little pokes, something that's supposed to make me feel guilty or ashamed or sad or embarrassed or whatever, something that takes down my natural joyful energy into like hunching my shoulders and feeling not as good. So I see sometimes those little floaters or sometimes a little flash of light when I have my eyes closed. And this often happens going over that membrane from like wakefulness, daily waking consciousness into sleep. Like, you know, you're kind of almost have to like go through a membrane or through a transition. I often see actual faces in those moments of transition. And what they look like to me is like very distorted or monstrous humans. But we have to stretch our definition of what the word human is like a very when I say monstrous. So here's one of the challenges that I had to overcome in perceiving these faces. When I first came into this body and I would perceive these, interdimensional faces, because in my daily waking life, if I see someone that has a facial deformity, I don't think, oh, that person is evil. I think, oh, that person was, in a car accident or something like that. So I had to start to understand the rules in the astral realm are pretty much like you earn your body based upon what you have done and who you are as a person. So in this physical realm, a very, very good, loving person can be horribly disfigured by being in a car accident or burned or something like that. So we have to say to ourselves, if we see someone who looks disfigured, don't judge them and think that they're bad or wrong, something horrible happened to them. I was applying that approach of the physical anthropomorphic realm to this higher dimensional realm and saying, oh, like I shouldn't reject these beings outright just because they look monstrous or deformed. They could be good people that just had something bad happen to them, because I didn't understand that in the higher dimensional realm, everything is very literal. If you do righteous deeds, then you have a righteous body. Your body is like as beautiful and perfectly formed as whatever, like a Grecian statue or, an Olympic athlete. And that's because you're building your body with your good deeds and your good thoughts and your proper emotions and an expression of divinity. And if you do not act and do and think in the right way, you're not in alignment with that divinity, and the body begins to become manifested or expressed as a distortion. That could be like maybe an eyeball is missing or whatever, like their teeth aren't right, or, the face is all crooked or something like that. And also sometimes what I'm perceiving in that interdimensional world between the world of waking and sleeping are supernatural residues, which again, the person in life might have been a very nice person, but the things that are hanging around after their death are aberrations. And that's big, because it could be like, I'm a nice, kindly old grandmother in life, but then once you're dead, you're supposed to be dead. You're not supposed to be hanging around. So sometimes these residues become monstrously distorted. And that's another thing, like don't apply the lessons of life where you're like, oh, let's be nice to people, even if, they're looking in a certain way, to the people that are here. Like you shouldn't interact with those supernatural residues. They should not act through you. They should not take over your life in any way. They shouldn't even be talking to you. So, so a lot, basically that's my long answer. My short answer for you, thank you for bearing with me during this very tons of flapping and moving mouth parts, is that they look ugly. They look ugly, they look monstrous, they look disgusting, they look shockingly gross and disgusting, to the point like if I see a flash of one of these faces, I'm like, oh, like you recoil. They don't look beautiful, they don't look becoming, they don't look attractive at all. And this is a big thing. As we begin to see clearly with inner vision, we begin to see people's true essences inside. And sometimes when you see their true essence, it's enough to make you recoil. You're like, yeah, that person is ugly and disgusting. You have to love, meaning accept those true perceptions. You can't be like, oh, I saw this ugly, disgusting thing, but I'm just going to make a bunch of justifications, blah, blah, blah. And because it's not very polite. Like it's not polite to admit to that. Let me drink a little bit of water. I read this very silly book. I actually listened to it as an audiobook. It was one of these mashups between two unlikely genres. And it was basically about like the Victorian era of Pride and Prejudice had zombies in it. It was called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Just a very silly book. I'm sorry that I'm even mentioning it in so much detail. But the point is, the people in that book were so very, very polite that the zombies were trying to break into their house, and they couldn't even call them zombies. They're like, oh, the unmentionables are here. And that's the whole point. Like, don't be so very, very polite that there's freaking zombies right here. You're allowed to understand and recognize that that's who and what they are. So yeah, they look ugly and they look disgusting. And also, like, that's why it is totally inappropriate when those occupiers of the interstices criticize our beautiful alive bodies. Like I was speaking about that last week, I think, the idea of these occupiers being like, you have freckles on your face, you're ugly and disgusting. And you're like, I have a face. Like, what is it? There's nothing wrong with my face. So that's it. So they are like twisted, distorted versions of who they could have been, and diminished, horrible versions of who they could be. And they're also very uncomfortable, and they're terribly jealous of you and me and anybody who's happy and joyous and comfortable, and anybody who likes themselves or likes what they're experiencing in life. Like, they're the complete antithesis of that. Okay, Hans is asking a really good question too. He says, are there different types of prudies? Yes, of course there are. There's a whole hierarchy of hell. There's a whole hierarchy of the astral realm. And this is actually very appropriate. We're going to do a good segue into level 1 and level 2, because level 2 is all about Merkaba and how we use, here I have my wonderful, wonderful fancy foam core projects here to be able to use my visual aids, how we use that for vehicular travel in the higher dimensional realms. So here's the whole point. The astral realm, this is the realm we're talking about. It's the realm of dreams. It's the realm of imagination. It's the realm of the inner world that you're perceiving with your inner eye. It's a world of pure thought. This world that we're in right here, look, I'm touching my shoulder. It's made of matter. This world is made of matter. And also we're combining that matter with thought energy and consciousness energy. The astral realm, by definition, it is a realm of pure mind. Some people, pardon my French, profanity alert, have very effed up minds. You know what I'm talking about. They're twisted and distorted. And in the astral realm, if you're twisted and distorted inside who you are on a basic level, that shows on the outside. That shows who you are. It's like, it's very, very clear. And because your mind is creating your structure of your body in that realm. So that's why these supernatural residues are not attractive. The actual demons themselves. So yeah, some demons, blah, blah, blah. How can I even go through this? Demons have all sorts of different appearances when you perceive them. Yeah, don't be impressed by anything that they are. Sometimes they'll come through the cultural filter of like red scaly skin and actual horns or something like that. But they could look like all sorts of different things. So yeah, there's a hierarchy or a stratification of the different beings that live in hell. And some beings that are on the planet right now that have a physical, organic, cellular structure are part of that hierarchy. So they have a physical body, but they're still demonic minions, meaning that their consciousness is connected to this economy of hell, and they're acting for that benefit in this world. So yeah, so there are some beings that might look human or humanoid. There are some beings that might look extraterrestrial. There are some beings that might look like the typical biblical literalist definition of what a demon or a devil is. Let me just drink a little bit more water, and then I'll get into what all this is. And then I'll get back onto level 1. Wait. When we're looking through an anthropomorphic level, we're looking through a lens, right? And if I'm seeing someone else, this this goes beyond mere cultural, just putting down my stuff so I can gesture properly, rather. Cultural beauty standards can be arbitrary and ridiculous. Like, for some reason, like, this color hair is considered beautiful, this color hair is not considered beautiful, so everyone's going to put a chemical on their hair so that they've got the color hair that is considered beautiful. Those are arbitrary beauty standards. When we are meeting other beings that are of a vastly different type of species or type of energy pattern or whatever, when we're looking through our lens, we're looking through the human cultural lens. So if the person that we're looking at through our lens is happy and healthy and loving and undistorted, we will see them as if they are a beautiful human. Like that's how we would interpret them. The way that we would see an angelic being. Like, what do we think the definition of an angel is? Well, angels have beautiful faces, and they have beautiful long flowing robes. Like, they're excellent dressers, and they have nice, beautiful wings, and like they evoke beauty and, you know, elegance and all the things that we would consider positive. So that feeling when you see a higher dimensional being, that's not just mere the arbitrary beauty standards in human culture. That's not just arbitrary. It's really based upon righteousness. And when I say righteousness, I literally mean like doing the right things with their mind, doing the right things with their body, playing like that musician is really in tune. That's why they look beautiful to you. So the filter, the human lens through which you're perceiving something that is abstract, but when you see it through your human filter of interpretation, you interpret it as a beautiful winged being with, you know, whatever, beautiful gown or fancy armor or something like that. And when you see someone that is an abstraction, that is a mangled abstraction. So let's say if you were looking at one of my paintings or my dress or something like that, what if all of the lines didn't match up? What if one area was all crumpled up or totally missing or whatever? That's what these putis would look like in the abstract realm. And when we look at it through our filter of interpretation, what we see is, you know, like a hunchback, or like a person with their face melted, or a person with no face or whatever. And also those beings that have that appearance in the astral realm, sometimes they're like at peace with that. Like the idea of Freddy Krueger, like, you know, this kind of like monstrous thing. It's like, I'm going to show you my face and I know you're going to be afraid of me. Like they get off on that's part of their persona. Let me go into the chats because I know that there are lots of good comments here. Chris is agreeing, like he sees faces too sometimes. Yeah, Brandon is offering to show us a painting in 2004 that's a representation, and I would like to see them. Gala makes a really interesting point, says they have no aura too. That's exactly right. Like, you will not see them like a beautiful person surrounded by rainbow colors and, you know, like twisting, you know, magical shapes, or, you know, like looking like a unicorn. You will not see that. It's like a very dead, that's the best, you know, whatever, inert kind of, and yeah, they might try to use their voice to appear to be like loving, but to me, they never give me that actual tone, that actual love tone. It doesn't give me that feeling in my heart. So they might say the words, I love you, but they are empty words because I don't really feel the love coming from them. So that's another very good like litmus test on whether they are loving. Yeah, and Pedro is saying that's good. These tips help in terms of being prepared when he starts to activate his higher faculties. So that's what in level 2, we'll talk all about beginning to do this travel using the Merkaba, going into higher dimensional mental states, and how do we, it's just like the lessons that we have to learn in human socialization, but there are different rules. So in human socialization, we have to learn who is cool and who's not cool, who's a friend, who's not a friend. I have had to learn this with my dog and also with other dogs. Like, some dogs are just jerks and you don't want to go anywhere near them, and some dogs are totally cool. And how do we distinguish between the two? Okay, so Dominic has got an interesting commentary. He says, you say, don't give them attention, but what the result of projecting love onto them? When you maintain your love tone in a very strong stance, like riding your bicycle without being blown over by the wind or anything like that, it literally disintegrates them. They are aberrations that are not supposed to be in existence. What they try to do is justify their existence by poking you or doing something to you so that you have to respond to them. You have to compensate for what they've done to you. And that the most powerful thing in the world to do is to not be mushed to the side, not be destabilized, and to maintain your love tone. That doesn't mean that you're projecting anything onto them. It's like saying, that's my tone, I'm doing no matter what this stupid person around here is trying to do to me. And just being that, you're sending out this music that makes them be destabilized, or makes them recognize the unreality of their existence. because that's the whole point. We're sending these beings into a state of entropy, which is non-existence. And you don't do that by having a long conversation with them and saying, hey, have you ever considered the idea that you don't actually exist? Because if I don't actually exist, how are you talking to me? So you don't talk to them. You don't do that. But what you do is you stand very strong in your expression of reality. And so in the non-physical realm and in these embodied beings that are in the physical realm, the end result is they begin to question their own existence. Like, you know, they're looking at their hand. They're like, who am I? How did I get here? Why? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do? What am I here for? Like they go into, let's say, an existential crisis that is so profound that they cease to exist. They kind of, because everything that they have, everything that they are, all of their energy is stolen. It all came, they're like Frankenstein's monster. Like one arm from this guy, one arm from this guy, you know, the head, everything was cobbled together. So if we sent all of those body parts back to their victims that they came from, there would be nothing there. There would be just a state of non-existence. So Joel says, do they know that they can be joyous too if they go back to entropy? I'm guessing that we just have to send them back to get them to realize. So that's a really excellent question, and thank you for being so insightful. These beings have signed up for the ultimate pyramid scheme. And if you've ever been part of a financial pyramid scheme, some people are true believers where they like, you know, put in their retirement savings, they're on the bottom of the pyramid, but they really think any day now, like that 30% return is going to, they're exponentially, they're going to get rich, they're going to grow. And even though they see all of these things happening to other people where they lose their shirts and then they get, you know, whatever, if they have no more money, they think that's not going to happen to me. Like I'm actually going to get a return on my investment. So they're in the economy of hell. There are some people who are true believers, some participants in hell who are true believers. And they actually think if they just work hard enough, torturing other people, that one day they'll have the big mansion on the big hill in hell. They'll have rewards in hell. But they don't understand that that's never going to happen. Like in the pyramid scheme, here's what happens in earthly pyramid schemes and hellish, non-earthly, astral, and dimensional pyramid schemes. The guys who start the system are the guys who make the money, and they cash out or they do what's called exit scam. And the people who enter the pyramid scheme, they have to keep on getting more and more recruits just in order to keep the whole thing going. And at a certain point, it becomes so out of balance that there's not enough payout to pay everyone. The guys at the top do their exit scam, they skim off all the cream, they get all of their profits they get out of there, and everyone else who's paid into it, they really don't get anything. So for us as embodied beings to say to them, like sometimes this can work. I've had interactions like this where you say to these demonic minions, like, hey, you're in the bottom of the pyramid. You're never going to climb your way up to the top. You're never going to be the top man on the totem pole. You're never going to be at the top of the hierarchy. And the hierarchy itself is being dismantled right now. That's what I talk about when I talk about the opportunity we have at this moment. Like if people are still busy like trying to gouge a dollar from another person, be like, oh, I'll only give you this thing for $1. It's like, oh my God, like we're at the time when the whole economy is being completely dismantled and rearranged. Like you don't have to just gouge people for $1, because that's that whole economy of hell as a template based on being placed upon our own human mundane experience of money. And in the human mundane experience of money, you're just supposed to be a cutthroat profiteer and not do anything just based on joy. And that's totally not my approach to making, you know, earning money and being able to sustain my activities that I do. So my approach is I'm going to do all of the activities that I love to do. I'm going to paint, I'm going to make my artwork, I'm going to make these sculptures, I'm going to make these animations, I'm going to share the ideas and energy. That's like my mission to share here. And getting paid is like a side effect of doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm playing the right music on my interdimensional piano, and then I'm getting rewarded like with my money. And that allows me to keep on playing the right notes. But what I don't do is be like, okay, like I could make 10 times more money if I just stop being an artist and go be like an insurance salesman. And I was joking in one episode about that because clearly I would not be an insurance salesperson. And I had that opportunity when I first came here, you know, many, many years ago as Aurora. And that, that would have been a very divergent peripheral life. That's not the right life for me, but I might have had more money in my bank account, but I wouldn't have designed this dress or made these paintings or be doing these videos and sharing these ideas with you. So hold on. So the idea is you're supposed to get paid because of you do what you do is joyful and is in tune with the rest of the cosmos. So you're supposed to get paid by doing things you love and loving your life. You're not supposed to get paid by sacrificing your basic humanity and conforming to, you know, society's expectations of what you need to do. And it's true, very few people, when they're a little kid, you ask them, what do you want to do, or what do you want to be when you grow up? They're like, I want to be a businessman. I want to wear my suit buttoned all the way up to the top. I want to have a briefcase and, you know, go to work in the morning with my coffee and, you know, type on the computer. Like, very few of them say that. So that's almost always like a compromised life that people get into in order to pay their bills and pay their electricity and do their car payments and everything like that. But we're supposed to be able to do all of that through joy. So Joelle, back to your excellent question. Let me drink more. The question was about, can you convince them? Like, hey, stop participating in this stupid pyramid scheme. Opt out. Be like, either stop playing their game or lean on your shovel. You know how like the union workers, there's like, their job is to dig a ditch. And there will be one guy digging a ditch and then 5 guys just leaning on their shovel like, oh yeah, we're working very hard here. That you could try to convince a demon like, yeah, like stop poking people, stop poking me, stop torturing humanity. You're never going to rise in the ranks. You're never going to get anywhere. But I'm also like, that's like scrubbing out each individual pair of dirty underwear. Like, oh my God, like there's an endless amount of dirty laundry to do, because every demon is going to come up to you and be like, hey, I want, you know, emotional energy from you. And you're going to have 10,000 conversations a day where you describe to them like, hey, you know, you're part of a pyramid scheme. You're never going to rise to the top, blah, blah, blah. And that guy's like, okay, fine, I'm pacified. Then comes the next guy, like endless, endless, endless. So we're time-based beings. That means you have a certain amount of time. If I have 24 hours in my day, how many hours do I want to spend convincing demons of the error of their ways? Like, I get bored. The truth is, I get very bored with that. I would way rather paint a painting, do some music, do something that's more fun and interesting. So one of the, well, whatever. Things get interesting in the economy of hell if you convince the higher ups to lean on their shovels, or better yet, to opt out of the system, or better yet, the economy of hell is based on soul currency. Like, instead of money, we've got here dollars that flow through the economy as currency, and what they've got are trapped and victimized aspects of consciousness or soul. And so some of the guys at the top of the pyramid, or like, you know, higher up on the hierarchy in hell, they've got a lot of souls stored up like in their bank accounts. And if you can convince those guys, like, hey, aren't you recognizing that you're never going to make it to the top, and there's never enough, and this is just, you know, a fruitless task. It's like burning your money. If you're a billionaire, it's not just like giving it away, because if you gave away your money, then the economy would still do what it needs to do. But let's say you're like Bill Gates, a real billionaire, and you decide like, this money system is totally, you know, ridiculous. I don't like it anymore. And it, you know, I don't like participating in it. And what if you're like, okay, I'm not just going to like give all my money away to charity, or just stop working and, you know, live off of my excesses. What if I'm actually going to have a big giant bonfire? What if I actually take all of my resources, turn it into physical dollars, and have a big giant bonfire, and actually take that currency out of circulation? So what if these beings that have a big, huge accumulation of souls in their soul bank account, what if they're like, oh, I'm not just going to like be like, okay, here's my bank account, I'll give it to another demon, and now they can be rich and I'll just be poor and go to entropy? What if those beings actually destroyed that currency by allowing those souls to go free? That would be a very amazing thing to happen, because it destabilizes their whole entire economy of hell. So yeah, let me go on more good comments here. Dominic says that he's noticed red around the eyes and one eye closed on a bit of people that seem off. Okay, so now we're starting to talk about the masks are being removed in physical reality. Once again, I have been for a long time practicing this idea of like, good people can be disfigured. I've been friends with people that were lovely people but had a disfigured face. So I haven't been saying, oh yes, if a person is ugly, I should run the other way. However, now at this point in human experience, what we are starting to experience is a removal of the masks or the glamour spells that have been placed in front of many people. And those masks or glamours, some of them are used on politicians or musicians or celebrities to hide their true face. So this is the whole idea. When these glamour spells are gone, and the way that they got their spells was from raping and torturing and cannibalizing, you know, innocent people. So they got their spells in a totally unethical way. So they've been wearing a mask that's like, they're horrible, distorted people, but they've been wearing a mask that says, I'm nice and pretty and good and love me and put me in a movie or buy my album. And that's how we've gotten to know them. And now that they're not getting their supplies that help to sustain their mask or their glamour, like a shield, like a fake projection. Like if we use technology as the analogy, imagine a holographic projection that projects a pretty, beautiful face as opposed to like an ugly hag face. And their projections are failing. And now we're actually starting to see what the true faces of many people look like. So yeah, they might look like they have a face that has like a horrible texture, like of a melted paper bag, or they might look horribly discolored, or they look suddenly very old. There are a lot of pictures that are going around now from former celebrities or people of notoriety in Hollywood who are looking very, very horrible. Like they have aged suddenly, like a picture of Dorian Gray. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. This idea that they've suddenly lost their supply of vampire blood to sustain them. Their vampires' supply of the fresh, innocent people blood to sustain them. And so now they're all looking horribly old or withered, or in some way their true face is showing. Let me drink. That congressional hearing that happened recently with FBI agent Peter Strzok, that was a wonderful example of masks being removed. He didn't suddenly look old in front of the viewer. He looked demonic. And I think that that was true seeing through the anthropomorphic filter. So people didn't necessarily see like, oh, that person's code or their lines and their spheres are out of alignment. They didn't see that. But what they saw was, wow, like that guy looks crazy. That guy looks like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. He looks like Hannibal Lecter. Like they saw, everyone could see there were all of these memes that were going around that he looked like a bloodthirsty maniac. And that's because the masks are being removed. So the glamour spells that made people look young, beautiful, and attractive are being removed. The spells that made people look like sane authority figures. That was what the glamour spell that was on that FBI agent said, Peter Strzok, like, I'm a sane, heroic authority figure was the mask. And the projection falters and everyone sees like, that guy's insane. He's a maniac. He's not a hero at all. So this is as we begin to awaken this inner vision and begin to actually see clearly, now it becomes easier to navigate the world because it used to be a lot harder. We couldn't actually tell like who's a friend, who's not a friend. But my little dog, you know, Cheeky, she's probably going to come in very soon because I'm talking about her. When we walk down the road, sometimes she barks at random people. Not random people, I should say. Sometimes she barks at people seemingly inexplicably. Like I don't know if it's the appearance or some item of clothing or what their race is or what they smell like or whatever, but some people she is just not cool with. And when I first got her, I was always thinking like, we're just gonna have to stop that through training. Like I'll just have to train her to not bark at people because it's so impolite, blah, blah, blah. But now she's really good and she doesn't just randomly bark at people. There's always something about them. So I think that she is able to perceive beyond the mask also, and she can tell like, that guy's not okay, I'm barking at him, we want to stay away from him. That person over there is, you know, whatever, cruel in some way, I want to stay away from them. So I think in a lot of this, we have to stop editing our perceptions because they're considered impolite and just recognize what is really, really going on. So, okay, yeah, good. Brandon is saying, can I screen share on here or would that stick up your presentation too much? No, Brandon, that would not stick up my presentation at all. And I'm just reading this. Okay, so hold on a minute. What do I have to do in order to allow you to screen share? Wait. Okay, hold on. I'm squinting and scrolling, everyone. I need to go over to Brandon and let's go to more and let's go to allow record, put on hold, make host, ask to start video. I don't know how to allow you to screen share, Brandon. So on the bottom of my screen, when I hover my cursor, and I'm on my desktop over here, I'm not on a tablet, I hover my cursor, there are different things at the bottom, and one of them is screen share. So I don't know if there's something, if you can do something like that. And Gala is saying like Mars attacks when they hear the music. That's so funny. So I just did a radio show on Monday night, and that was one of the things that we talked about, that we need to find the current version of that yodeling song by Slim Whitman that made the attackers from Mars heads explode. And we just need to everybody put on your cell phone, just drive around your neighborhoods, blast it out the window and everything like that. I won't sing that song here, but it's a very piercing song. Dominic is saying manifestation, let's do it. Pedro is saying, if we bump into a pootie, we can consider it stolen energy and send it back to its owner. Yes, yes, yes. So here's what I do when I interact with these demons. They'll come up to me, blah, blah, blah. They want to either eat me, poke me, get energy from me, have a conversation with me. And let's say I'm like, hey, I ain't interested in it. And I punch them in the face. They'd be like, well, that's not allowed, Aurora. I'd be like, hey, you got a problem with it? Take me to the higher court, right? The high court, like the big cosmic court of justice that upholds things like the laws of gravity and physics and things like that. Because here's the deal. If I went to court with one of these pooties, the judge would say, so I see that you've brought a case here. Yeah, to the pootie. You're made entirely of corruption. Everything that you are is stolen energy. So the very first thing I need to do is repatriate all that stolen energy back to the people that even allows you to be in existence, and then I'll be happy to hear your case. So that it's kind of like saying like you're fighting an aberration, something that is so totally wrong that shouldn't exist at all, that there's no question about who is right or whatever. So yeah, you can also bypass the court, or you just consider yourself a deputized avatar of justice, and just be like, oh, you're made entirely of corruption. Everything that you have is stolen. So we're just going to repatriate that all away. That you can just do it directly. And again, like you're part of the justice system. You're supposed to be this way. Okay. Interesting one. Interesting. Dominic is saying, I like pulling and pushing energy. Interesting. Okay. Joelle says, I guess you would not be happy as an insurance agent, Aurora. Definitely not. Not my basic whatever. Saul wants his solars, his children back. Maybe he is getting ready to help in a big way. Yeah, the stellar network, it acts through each one of us. And we'll get into, in this level, oh my God, I have 15 more minutes to talk about how energy transmits from the galactic central sun. Oh, good. Brandon is screen sharing. Awesome. Let's see what we got there, man. Yeah. So thank you very much for showing us your artwork. These are some of Brandon's examples of what one of these distorted occupiers of the interstices looks like. And I really appreciate, I see imagery that shows there's Earth, like on the left-hand image, and I see chains, the idea that these are the beings that are trying to keep Earth enchained. And also the energy of these pieces. I feel like I'm doing like a critique in art school, but I'm a very good teacher. Don't worry, I'm not mean. The energy of these pieces is like agitation, torture. These are not happy, nice people. Like that's the feeling that you get when you see these people. And like you're not going to be fooled. You're not going to be like, oh, I want to hug and kiss you. Like, no, like these are clearly horrible, malevolent. Yeah, malevolence is a word like that. I think describes their energy. I'm just looking at the chat a little bit more. Oh yeah, we'll get to that question too. Really, thank you for sharing the images, and I appreciate the information and also thank you very much, Brandon. The information, the artistry, and your willingness to share that with us. Very effective, thank you. Joelle is saying, the glamours of all these front organizations, very good, pretending to care and protect children are coming off. Yes, that's a really good point, that it's not just the glamours in front of an individual face, it's the glamour in front of the Clinton Foundation, or there's another one, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it sickens me because it literally calls itself like the Rainbow something something Foundation for Children's, health and welfare. But that they're actually like, horribly torturing children and trafficking them for sex. And but like, call it Rainbow, everything will be fine. So yeah, no one's being fooled by this crap, by this BS anymore. I want to get to Gala's question. This is really good. She says, when is Marina Abramovich ever going to age, or is she using FRL and not telling anyone? If she were using FRL, she would have one of those existential crises where she'd look at herself and be like, wait a minute, I'm a total aberration. I shouldn't even exist. Everything that I am is coming from stolen energy. Like if she actually had to repatriate all of her energy, she might not even be in a physical container anymore. But everything that has kept her seemingly young and vital, to an unlikely age and appearance, that all came from rape, murder, torture, and participating on that network of satanic technology. So what I'm seeing with a lot of these Hollywood starlets is, they start off in their 30s or so, getting lots of different treatments on their face that are based in satanic technology, like the baby penis foreskin facial that they do. And then it works for a short amount of time, but then it wears off and then their face starts to look melted. So they have to keep on getting more and more procedures. Just like that movie Brazil, they get complications on their complications. And then at a certain point, their faces just look melted. So a lot of people they don't have the energy to sustain their artifice anymore, and their faces look melted, or they look suddenly old, or they just look not young and attractive. They just look like a horrible old hag. So the part of us that is socialized says, hey, you're not supposed to say that an old woman, you know, toothless old woman whose face is all, you know, scrunched down and has gray hair, that's a toothless old hag. Like, you're supposed to be like, oh, that's an elder of our community. We should love and respect her. However, there are some people who are horribly distorted monsters that if you took away their masks, they would look like a toothless old hag and not like a nice, kindly grandmother. I've had nice, kindly grandmothers that I've met. And when here's the thing, I have Aunt Sylvia, she's, you know, gone into, I'm just trying to, here we go, exit full screen. She's passed on at this point. But however, even into her 90s, and she was in her low 100s when she actually passed on, she didn't look like one of these horrible melted paper bags. She looked older. She, you know, her face was a little bit saggy. She had more wrinkles and texture on her skin, but she was a good person inside, and she didn't look like one of these horribly distorted vampire people. And I use her as an inner example. I'm like, well, when she aged, she didn't turn into looking like a toothless old hag or whatever. She looked like still a beautiful person because she was a beautiful person inside. Like, she was a older person who was never racist and sexist, and she accepted me as Aurora, you know, being a galactic walk and all these things. So she was quite an unusual person. So I really think your inner true face begins to show. Joelle is saying the Rainbow Cultural Garden. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what, it was one of these horrible, you know, whatever, refugee agencies or whatever, and they're trying to just covered with the front. Okay, very good. All right, good. So I got through all the different chat questions. Thank you very much. Now let's go on to the actual level 1 presentation and drink a little bit of water here. Oh, and just like me with my grocery lists, I made a list, I made notes so that I know what I'm supposed to be talking about here, and I'm going to consult with my notes. Ah, good, so I actually know what I'm doing. Hold on. Good, okay, all right, guys. I'll put this over here where I can see it. In lesson 7, in the recorded lessons, I go extensively into the differences between Newtonian physics and Einsteinian physics, or quantum physics. And the whole idea is that with science on Earth's surface right now, that there are 2 basic approaches or modes or descriptions of reality. There's descriptions of reality that are macroscopic objects. And that's like you and me and the planet and bowling balls and feathers, things that are large accumulations of many, many atoms and molecules. And this comes from Sir Isaac Newton, that basically he observed the world around him in the mid-1600s just using his 5 senses. And this was a step up from what was previously done, because before that, the world was full of the Western Northern European world was full of superstition, where they didn't, if there was a disease or some event or something that happened, instead of saying, let's use our 5 senses and rationally try to figure out what happened, they would use superstition, which is like a very, very distorted way of using inner vision. So in that time, we're talking about a time when there was still the plague in Europe, and that people were like, we don't know where the plague came from. They didn't know it was because they dumped their garbage out the window, like a very, very unenlightened time. So Newton's work was great and valid for his time. He came along and he said, let's just look at the world around us with our 5 senses and talk about what we can measure, what we can see, what we can perceive, and build a structured set of rules based on that. And I think it's valid work. Let me drink a little bit of water. He did a lot of work in terms of creating our basic understanding and basis of how light works, light mechanics, and how the spectrum is created. He actually created that Roy G. Biv, delineation of the spectrum into 7 segments, 7 different colors of the rainbow, and the idea that light, one singular beam of light, is being refracted through a lens or a prism into its constituent elements, which are the elements of the rainbow, and that we are analogous to that because there's that one ray of consciousness that gets refracted through our being, our individuality, as whatever ego dwellers submerged in time, and then we get split up into our constituent elements, which look like, let's go to just a basic image that I've got shared up on my computer. So wait, this is all level 2 stuff here. This is what we look like when all of our white light of pure undifferentiated consciousness is split up into its constituent elements, which basically have to do with different aspects of self moving at different rates. Different layers of self move at different rates through time. Okay. So a couple of 100 years later, we've got Einstein. And this is the whole idea that Einstein, gave us a leg up. I just need to drink a bit more water. In terms of I'm laughing at what Pedro is saying because I spent so long answering questions in the beginning. I'm moving fast though. Einstein gave us a leg up, us meaning humanity and human social culture, in terms of understanding things more at a quantum level. That now we have this bifurcation. We've got all of the rules that apply to macroscopic objects, and then we've got all of the rules of the quantum physicists that apply to matter once we chop it up into the tiny, tiny, tiny bits that are atoms or subatomic particles, particles that are even tinier than atoms. When we look at matter at that scale, it doesn't act in the same way that matter acts here at this scale. So at this scale, like if we look at something like an astronomical body, like the moon or the planet Venus, it has a predictable orbit. You know, it's orbiting around and it's moving according to these macroscopic laws of physics. So we know, okay, it's over here at one point, and then it's moving in its orbit over here. So we can predict in blah, blah, many days, we know it's going to be over here. It's predictable. That's the whole point. These are stately, predictable, massive, grand scale movements. But the predictability makes that system highly vulnerable to hacking. Because if we know, okay, object A is going to move across the sky at this rate, at this time, and it's going to be here at this time, then if I don't want object A to reach its destination, all I have to do is put an obstacle here, shoot it with a gun, do whatever I need to do to stop object A from moving across the sky. And so that can also be a challenge for us in terms of navigating the time field. So if we are navigating through this area over here, that is the area of possibilities and probabilities, and if it's very predictable, like we know you're going to be on blah, blah timeline, on blah, blah day, going in blah, blah direction, then if I want to mess with you, it's very easy for me to, I'm going to put an obstacle there. I'm going to drop a piano on your head. I'm going to make you get a flat tire so you never have that crucial meeting. You never meet your, true love and, get married and have babies. Let me drink more water. Now let's contrast this with the idea of subatomic rules, the rules that happen at the quantum level. So here I'm going to draw an atom, and this relates to what I was talking about last week with the cell and the cell membrane. And just choosing like a good color that you can see. So last week I was talking all about the cell and the cell membrane. Here would be the nucleus with this nuclear membrane, and here would be the cell membrane. That exact same diagram can refer to the atom. And it's amazing that we also call this area of the atom the nucleus. That's where, certain subatomic particles reside. And then where I'm pointing this arrow over here, that is the first electron shell. And now let's use red is the electron color. So here's a little red dot. That's an electron. But this is not actually true to life. When we, look at such a tiny, tiny scale of what we define as matter, due to the question of observership, we cannot say exactly where that little red dot is. We don't know. It could be there, it could be there, it could be there. And remember, this line, that black line, is actually a sphere. We're looking at a cutaway. So there's actually a whole spherical shell. I'm just trying to draw like some lines of latitude and longitude. You understand, this is not flat, this is spherical. There's a whole area where the red dot can be. So all we can do is we can say there's a likelihood, there's a probability. So it's like say you're so tiny that we can't actually tell where you are going to be during your day. Like we can say, okay, if it's this time of day, there's a statistical likelihood that you'll be sitting in your breakfast nook eating breakfast, but you might not be. You might sleep late. You might have a completely backward schedule. So we can just say there's a likelihood of where that little red dot will be, but not exactly where we'll be. So what science does is it just draws a big red line representing the electron shell, the area of likelihood. And that relates very much to when I draw the chakras and I show you there, you've got these, toroidal structures that are areas of possibility and probability, that those are time areas where you might be a little red dot over here, or you might be a little red dot over here. However, it is difficult to say exactly where you are. There's just a field of probabilities, possibilities and probabilities. And then the question is, so science kind of got backed into a corner because it said, what's the bridge that ties together the rules that are happening at this very, very tiny level that there are certain rules that govern the behavior of energy and particles that are at this tiny, tiny level, as opposed to the level of a person with 2 arms and 2 legs, or a planet, or a bowling ball, or a feather. That once we get together enough of these in order to make one of these, all of a sudden it starts acting differently. That is the corner that science got backed into. So now, here, I'll go back to my face. Now what we gotta go to, so, okay. When Einstein gave us these ideas of quantum physics, some of the ideas that were liberating were the idea of participation due to observership. What that means is, because you look at things and you look at the world and you observe it and you either measure it or perceive it in some way, that you are having impact on the positioning of those electrons. And so there's many different experiments that have been done over the years in order to express this basic truth. So it's just something that is more ingrained in our culture at this point. The idea that you as a participant are affecting your environment. And that runs very, very contrary to the stuff that Newton was teaching everyone, which is basically the world is what it is. Because back then everybody thought like, oh, if you got the plague, it was because, you know, someone pointed a crooked stick at you, or, you know, a black cat crossed your path or whatever. So back then the story of the world was very malleable. So it was helpful to get things stable and say, no, you didn't get that from a black cat. You got that from microorganisms, and that, you know, like, let's all be on the same page of what's the story that's making reality happen. But when we get to be hundreds of years later, even more complex and sophisticated in our understanding, we understand, well, wait a minute, consciousness really does affect other people. Consciousness really does affect the behavior of biology and the behavior of cells. So what you're perceiving and what you're experiencing with other people actually is affecting your health and actually is affecting all of this. So that's part of the liberation of what Einstein gave to us, and other quantum physicists of that era, was the idea of participation and observership. One of the things that was just another limitation that was given to us by Einstein is the limitation of the speed of light, because many of his famous equations were based on the speed of light being like an unbreakable barrier. That's just something that you cannot go faster than the speed of light, or you cannot accelerate matter faster than the speed of light. So it gave humanity this blockade, or like this membrane beyond which it could not go. So now if I go back to the whiteboard here, this has everything to do with what I wanted to talk about last week in level 2, which is the stellar network and how ideas propagate through space. So clear everything out. Clear all drawing. So let's say this is the galactic central, you know, supermassive black hole that's at the center of our galaxy. And now I'll draw a different color. Here we go. All of these red circles are stars that are all throughout the galaxy. And it's roughly, we're in a spiral galaxy, so they're usually depicted as, like, you know, spiral arms, but you just understand, like, I'm drawing a few dots. There's millions and billions of actual stars. And now I'll draw a little dot that represents us, like this, this little green dot is us, all right? Like way out in the boondocks of interstellar space. So according to Einstein, if the speed of light is the limit at which energy can propagate through space, and we have this as our starting point, the central galactic supermassive black hole. And if we send out energy from there, like in the form of a wave, here's an energy wave that's going out from there. It can take millions of years for that energy wave, you know, like a photon or a bit of laser light, to travel outward from there and actually reach this area over here. And let's say if you're a little person in a civilization on this planet over here, and you want to actually have a conversation with this level of intelligence that is at the center of our galaxy. That level of intelligence, first of all, it's not separate from self. It is you. It is all of us. It's not like you're talking to something else or someone else. It might be far distant in space. However, it's still an aspect of our own consciousness. It's the origin of that white light that makes up who we are. So we should be able to talk with it. But if we could only talk using a linear back and forth through space, then it would be like, okay, like if I'm going to send out a hello signal to the central sun over there, the central black hole, then it's going to take millions of years, like just arbitrarily, let's say, like it take 100 million years just for my hello to get there. And then it's like, oh, I just got a message. Look, I just got an email from Earth that says hello. Oh, good. I'm going to email back just going to take another 100 million years. So now that whole little process has taken 200 million years. And of course, the original person that sent out that message is dead, and their descendants are no longer even the same species, and they've become, you know, a totally different type of life form on Earth, and they don't even remember the original query. And it's kind of like there is no effective way to have a real-time conversation if we are respecting the limit of the speed of light. And I said very clearly that this central portion of our galaxy here, it's an aspect of our own self. It's not like, because if you couldn't get a signal from your toe to your brain, like if this is your toe and this is your brain, and you can't actually get a signal from your toe to your brain, that's very dangerous. You've got, you know, neuropathy or something wrong with your body. So now we're going to talk about folding the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, because all of this you can imagine as like a big giant, you know, oh my goodness, I can't even believe that was like, let me try this again. You can tell sometimes it's hard for me to use the whiteboard and the pen, like to actually control what I'm drawing here. Now I'm drawing a flat square, kind of pretending that this is like on a flat piece of fabric, just for the ease of being able to talk about this stuff. So we've got various different stars here, and each one of these stars, when I use my example, is going to be like a little vortex in this larger fabric. And so what happens, let me just drink a little bit more water here. So Einstein's way of doing things doesn't really work, and I'm telling you it's not accurate. Here's what really happens through higher dimensional space. A thought impulse originates from where I'm making the black X. And I keep calling it a supermassive black hole. So a supermassive black hole, that's like what happens when we stretch the fabric of time, space, and consciousness an infinite amount. This is infinity, where I'm making this arrow down here. It just keeps going infinitely off the screen, completely in that direction. So what we've got is an infinite stretching area in there. And thoughts come out of that infinite stretching area, but they don't have to move across linear space in order to get to the stars. What happens is this fabric that they are both a part of gets folded, so that, imagine that this is like a fold that's happening here. And then these two things get brought together much more closely, so that there is actually no space between those two things. And in order for us on this little green dot over here to be able to have a conversation, like we've got our own star that is near us, here's a little star that we live under. And so there's information that comes from the central black hole, and it gets through higher dimensional space. We're bending and folding the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, so it can go there instantaneously and then be emitted from that star to our planet, and it will only take a few minutes if we're having to go in, you know, linear fashion. So what I'm trying to say is that ideas propagate. Like, let's say this center of the galaxy is like the great antenna, the great cell phone broadcaster that's broadcasting to everyone, and it broadcasts non-locally to all of these other smaller nodes, and each one of these nodes then broadcasts that signal outward, so that it is not simply a question of being close in linear space, and this is being able to understand how we transform our experience of time in order to be able to have a higher dimensional conversation. I will get to the questions in the chat, but first, let me use this little example of my stylish rainbow scarf. Let's pretend that this is that square that I drew of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. And so kind of like in the middle would be, oh, there's that supermassive black hole that's at the center of the galaxy. And then all of the stars of the galaxy would be sprinkled throughout here, where I'm touching with my fingers. So let's say here's a dimpling of, each star has one of these portals, or a dimpling of this fabric. Here I'm dimpling the fabric, so I've got this pointy end over here, and this is what bends around in order to touch the center of the galaxy. And all of the stars bend around. Look, here's another pointy end. Here's another pointy end that bends around, and they all, these are all stars. I think I'm going to sneeze, hold on a minute. These are all stars that bend around, and they all meet, and they all touch. I'm trying to make this kind of drape over. They all touch that central broadcaster at the middle or center of this galaxy. So each star in the sky that we see a little pinpoint of light is a puckering of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. And each one of those little concentration points of consciousness all come together, and they all fit together and touch on that central emitter of thoughts and consciousness. That's what I'm trying to say. So in order to have a conversation with your body part that is actually a great brain that actually lives, you know, very, 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 very far away, we have to learn how to fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness so that we are not far in a linear sense, because we're far in space and we're also far in time. If I can just only move whatever 1 mile per hour, then it's going to take me 1,000,000 billion years to actually get on over there. And as I'm crawling across the surface here, it reminds you of a little crawling ant. My house is infested with ants right now. I know it's not just me, it's this whole area. It's because it's very, very hot outside and all the ants want to come inside. But I'm like, ants, you cannot be inside. Like, this is where I live. Please go outside. So it's very challenging. But these little ants are crawling across the surface of time and space. They cannot simply fly. They cannot simply jump off the surface of my hand and go directly to where they want to go. Or what, you know, really efficient ants do is fold the fabric of the cosmos and say, I'll bring my destination to me. So this folding motion is just like that, bringing together of the various different stars that all come together. This is essential understanding, like an editing or transformation of each person's understanding, so that we can begin to become participating citizens on a galactic level. Like, that's the whole, being a galactic citizen. It means, you know, we have a far distant extremity like your fingertips or your toes, that even those far distant cellular extremities talk with the neurology. And it's like, hey, even though I might be, look, my arm is like, you know, 3 feet away from my brain, but my fingertips are still connected to what is happening with my thought structure. And I don't consider that to be like, oh, it's so far away, it's not even a part of me. So this is what it is. It is becoming a part of the whole. Hold on, drinking. And in order to be, for us as humanity, as a species, to become a part of the whole, we have to transcend what Einstein taught us. So Einstein was, you know, like a effective teacher, and I'm happy that he was in existence, and that was good for that time. But just like first came Newton, and he was pretty good for his time, and then came Einstein, and he was a step up from Einstein. Now we need to have a different, more expansive understanding that is appropriate for what we are at this level in you know, individual human development and planetary human development. Okay, so now I'm getting to good questions over here. So Dominic is saying, Dominic says, when I said push and pull energy, it's more like sitting at the side of a whirlpool. So I think I can understand that feeling. Salu says, what is the white light? Is it the culmination of quote unquote everything? The white light, if I say we have a prism, you know, like a refractor, going to the whiteboard here. Do it, technology, do it. Clear everything out. Draw a prism. Here, this little triangle is a prism. And let's say this black line is actually white light. And then we've got all the different rainbow colors that come off of the white light, from everything from red all the way down to violet. And I won't draw all of the colors because it'll take too long. And this is already running a little bit long. This white light over here that is coming into there, it is the totality. It is the recipe of you. Like, we have all of these different layers of being, from the physical through the emotional, the intellectual, you know, all the way up to the divine. That's like saying we have different recipes or elements of the cake. This white light is cake. This is the cake. It's what happens when you put together all of those ingredients in just the right way, that it makes something that is larger than the whole. So I think if anybody has ever eaten cake, I think we would all agree that cake is more delicious and fantastic and wonderful than just eating like a cup of flour, a cup of sugar, like some raw eggs. You're like, that's not delicious. Those are not good. That's not a good way of eating stuff. But if you put together the right recipe, the right ingredients, in the right proportions, in the right order of operations, you get wonderful, delicious cake. So that white light, it is the consciousness that emanates from the central convergence point. This is the singularity. The singularity I'm defining as this convergence of all timelines. And it is analogous to the stretching of the interdimensional super stretchy fabric of space, time, and consciousness. Stretch that fabric to an infinite point and you get the singularity. In that way, it overlaps with science's definition of the singularity, which is what happens at the center of a black hole, where what you've got all of these rules of Newton of the cosmos that say this is how reality is structured. All of those rules break down at the center of a black hole. That is how science describes it. And to make very clear, this does not relate to the singularity of transhumanism. The singularity of transhumanism has to do with what is considered a benevolent or inevitable melding together of biological humanity and artifice machinery like microchips, that in order to become like, you know, a super deity, you have to somehow stop being just a natural human and meld with machinery, or like become telepathically indistinguishable from a large AI network. And I'm totally not an advocate of that. So when I talk about the singularity, I'm talking about it in this abstract sense. And Terence McKenna, like, he's an interesting person, and I don't vouch for everything that he did. He did very interesting work, though, on this program that he wrote called Time Wave Zero, which was an algorithm that basically looked at harmonics in events over time. And what was interesting to me was that this algorithm, like when we're looking at waves of anything, waves of sound or of light, at a certain point, the waves organize themselves, and they have nodes that where everything kind of collapses down. And that is what happened in this Time Wave Zero algorithm, that everything collapsed down into this focal point in 2012 that Terence McKenna described as a singularity. Let's call it a point of complete novelty. That was how he described it. And I bring that up because I think that is an accurate description. Like, that is what science means when it says that all of the rules of reality, like that describe physical reality, break down at the center of a black hole. Like, yes, everything becomes so unpredictable, we can't even talk about what's happening because everything is happening. That is the levels of unpredictability. Or it's like saying the infinite improbability drive, you know, in that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Press the big red button, press the big red button, and then the most unlikely thing that can possibly happen will happen. That is what happens in the point or in the convergence moment of complete novelty. The most unexpected, miraculous, unusual, impossible things happen in that moment. And so that singularity can actually be like a wonderful moment of freedom or whatever, something that is very expansive. Okay, I'm just reading some of these chats here. Oh, Chris is saying, thought is instant, faster than speed of light. Yes, that's the whole point. So we humans on Earth are becoming sophisticated, telepathic, galactic citizens. And what that means, now we're going to get into advanced level stuff, even though I'm level 1 right now. It means that if we are going to talk instantaneously, like I'm going to talk with a civilization, if this is where I'm located in space and time, and they're located over here, I'm going to talk with them in spite of the long distance that is between us. This civilization over here might not be in existence yet. It might be in existence in 1,000,000 years, and I'm going to talk to them right now. It means I'm technically talking to the future. And how about if I want to talk to a civilization that might have already been in existence, that what would be considered a star that has already died? Now, some of the stars, when you look up at the night sky, the original star is emitting light. The light is coming through, the light is coming through, the light is hitting your planet. That star has already died and gone away. But you're getting like the time delay of thoughts from that star. So if you tried to reach out to that star right now in real time, it would say, I can't talk to you, I'm dead. But you can enjoy some of the light that I emitted back in the time when I was actually alive. So now, in order to have these complex galactic conversations on the stellar network, we need to begin to recalibrate our definition of what it is to be alive. Is something alive if it's here with us right now? Is something alive if it's not here with us right now? Is something alive if it will be alive in 1,000,000 years and we can talk to it right now? Like, we are talking essentially to beings of pure potential because they don't exist yet, but they will exist in 1,000,000 years. And that all of this is affecting one another. Like, let's say, if we are in a conversation with a group of beings that will exist in 1,000,000 years, but they're not here now, and there are descendants They're like our literal children. Like we can be in a real-time conversation right now as the deep antiquity ancestors of beings that will exist in the far distant future. And what they're saying to us is even affecting us and maybe even bringing into existence the fact that they will exist in the future. This is part of what is necessary to begin to become a sophisticated galactic citizen. Dominic says the fight or flight reflex is faster than thought. That's interesting too. Joelle says white and dark, quote unquote, light is the same information, right? I don't know quite how to answer that, because when I say darkness, what I'm talking about is the absence of light. So in art school, we do a little learning with the teacher teaches us. Hold on, go back to here. Go to the whiteboard. In art school, we learn that first there is, like, let's say here's the sun and the sun is emanating light. And then here's the object. It's like an apple. I'm drawing like a little apple, right? With a little stem. There's the object, and then the object casts a shadow. And the object casts a shadow because light rays fall on the object and they bounce off of the object, but the object itself blocks light from being able to go on its natural path. That this is what is happening. That I would say light itself is a pure phenomenon of existence. It is just consciousness existing. It is knowledge. That's light can be synonymous with knowledge. It is knowingness and beingness and being in existence. However, due to this mechanical aspect of the physical realm, when light interacts with a material object that is solidified light, it means that there's going to be a shadow or an area where there is no light, an area of non-being, an area of darkness. So the question that you asked was white and dark light is the same information, right? I would say that darkness or shadow arises as a side effect of the phenomenon of lightness or being. And it is not inevitable, because what we're actually moving into is this world of pure light, of pure, essentially no shadow. If we only have light that is moving in its pathway without hitting any objects bouncing off of them and creating shadows, then all we have is a world of pure light. But in our eyes, as I described in a couple of lessons ago, the idea of duality is programmed into our visual system of perception, which works on contrast. So in my face on the screen right now, there's an area of lightness that means you're looking at the silhouette of the edge of my face, and then an area of darkness that is over here where my hair goes off. And every one of us that has eyeballs and is watching this on a video is experiencing this. The contrast between lightness of my skin and darkness of the shadow in my hair, that makes it look like there's a face there. Hey, there's volume. Hey, there's something there. That's how we've learned to perceive the world. So to many people, it is almost unimaginable, inconceivable that we would have a world made of pure light. Because they're like, how could you even see anything if you just have a world of pure light? Almost presuming the necessity of shadow in the world. Shadow meaning non-being or unconsciousness, right? That things that are unaware, that we have to have this contrast in order to be able to see objects and perceive objects. However, there can be different qualities of light. This is the whole idea. If you go into this higher dimensional realm that looks like this world, I actually don't see shadows there, but I do see different qualities of light. Some of the light might be yellow, some of it might be red, some of it might be blue. So we have different qualities or behaviors of light that allows us to perceive different objects and make delineations and see individuality, but that does not necessarily mean that there is an absence of light. Like a light bulb is on over here, but there is darkness over here, so that's how we can see the light bulb is in existence. You can have a world that is 100% light bulbs, and you can actually have scenes that are portrayed with all those light bulbs, but the light bulbs have different colors and different qualities to them that make you be able to see that there's a difference between what's over here and what's over here. So it's a different form of perception, but it's hard because we're programmed to understand contrast. Salou says, I guess it's beyond intellectual logical understanding. All of this that I'm talking about is beyond intellectual or logical understanding. And I'm telling you, I don't logic my way into this world that I see of abstraction. It's like if you hear a symphony, you don't logic your way into experiencing the symphony. You sit there and have the music wash over you, and you're like, oh, I hear violins, I hear drums, I hear clarinets, like you hear everything all at once. That's what it's like to be there. when I'm there or perceiving in that world, it's not like, oh, this is this because of this, and this connects to this because of this. There's no because. There's just experience, like the clarinets are playing. It's not like the clarinets are playing because I also hear saxophones and I also hear drum. Like, no, just the music is what it is. So I think the music is what it is in terms of abstraction and the structuring of reality. And then I think the intellect makes up a story that says, oh, this happened because of this, and this is connected to this, and this is connected to this. And in last week's episode, I described the intellect as like the least valuable worker at any particular company that never does anything, is totally unproductive, sits at their desk, rearranges pencils, does nothing, but when it's time to downsize says, you can't get rid of me, I'm the backbone of this company, I'm the most important thing. So I think we don't actually need intellect in order to be able to describe the experience of what we are perceiving with our higher dimensional perception. You just need the higher dimensional perception. And whenever that part is so I'm going to end level 1, move on to level 2. But one of the things I'm circling back to is this idea of the masks being removed, and you don't need the intellect to describe or justify what you see through your higher dimensional vision. You see it. That's the way that my experience is in all of these things, all of the patterns that I see and all of the impressions that I see, and even what I see through my anthropomorphic filter. You just see it. You perceive it. Like I see a color red, I see a color blue. There's no intellectual ism going on here. There's no my mind thinking about it or logicking through it or having to say, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. That's why sometimes when I do my paintings, it's like, okay, this doesn't necessarily make sense to my rational mind, but I just know that this is the way it's supposed to be. So I go a little bit on that level of like, trusting my inner vision. And then I'm like, oh, wait, look at how this all fits together perfectly. It's beyond the intellectual. And that's why it's a real challenge for me to be here using words and trying to appeal to the intellect in order to get across these ideas. It's a little bit hard. It's kind of like trying to describe the tastes and flavors of an actual lasagna. What I would like to do is just be much more direct and just be like, look, here is lasagna. Like, just eat the lasagna. Just eat it. So that's what I'm working on, these immersive art projects that are just beyond talking, beyond intellectualism, and just about having the experience of music and color washing over you. You get more questions and then level 2. I promise I'm doing level 2 today. Joelle says, is teleportation the same as bending time space to bring your destination to you? Is it the time of unlearning and expanding? It is the time of unlearning and expanding. I'm agreeing with you on that. So teleportation is a bit more complex because we're talking about moving matter. So matter can exist over here, and then we want the matter to exist over here without having to walk across the millions and billions of miles that it takes to get over there. So in order for us to do this, teleportation of matter, it's more challenging than just moving something that is non-matter, that is just made of energy. So there's all sorts of different answers that I can come up with, there's all sorts of different ways that I can explain this. But I think the best thing to do is to go into level 2, because we're talking all about the Merkaba as a tool for interdimensional travel. And then I think you'll begin to see how teleportation can actually be a real thing. But I also want to say this, like, once you get up to these higher dimensional levels, you don't just teleport like, oh, hey, I got a late library book. I got to bring this over to the library so that I don't get a fine. How about I just teleport on over there? Like, you don't teleport just so that you can save a nickel. Like, it's a very arduous, big, giant thing to have to do. So if it's just for like a mundane exercise, like returning your library book, probably not worth rearranging the entire fabric of time, space, and consciousness in order to do this. Like, you can do all sorts of wonderful things once you start to flying rainbow lasagna, including taking far distant molecules or molecular structure or atoms and bringing them together into one point of concentration. Like, let's get all the gold atoms from all these other divergent times and places and converge them together so that it's one little gold nugget. And then I can take it to the pawn shop and I can sell my magical gold nugget for like $10. I don't want you to rearrange the fabric of space, time, and consciousness just for $10. Like, that is not efficient, and that's not how we're supposed to be using these powers. So part of the journey of developing these capacities is developing the inner responsibility to use them in the correct way, so that we're not just making ugly music, we're making good music. Okay, Gala is saying the void. I don't know what that is in response to. Oh, and Joelle is clarifying, dark is in the dark matter part. So I don't know how to respond when people ask me about dark matter. They're like, Aurora, what do you think about dark matter? And I think that dark matter is a fill-in-the-blank puzzle piece supposition that human Earth-centered science, Earth surface science, has had to come up with in order to fill in the blank, in order for the story of how the cosmos hangs together. Like, hey, how does matter exist? How does the cosmos exist? How does all this work together? And so they're like, well, we've got a missing puzzle piece. Something's got to be there. Let's call it dark matter and let's make it be there. But I don't relate to that idea, and I question its merit. It's kind of like when I use that example of trying to reason one's way across the studio floor, when there's like sweaters, there's obstacles, there's coffee cups. Like, you should just be able to see. You shouldn't have to be like, oh, maybe there's a thing there. Maybe there's a thing there. There's something happening, but I can't tell what it is. So I'm going to make up, like, if you step on a sweater and you're like, wow, that sweater is there, but it didn't used to be there. So I'll make up a thing called dark matter to describe why and define and justify why that sweater is here today and it wasn't here at other times. So I think that dark matter is something that is a hypothesis or like a supposition that science has to think about in order to fill in the blanks for other things. But I think that at a certain point, you're going to cut the Gordian knot and just be like, don't use logic to try to navigate your way across, or you just see and you just see what it is. Mandy says, so is dark the light, cause all colors encompassed, and light the new dark, cause void of any color? No, I would not say that dark is the new light at all. And I would not, because darkness, like evil, Luciferian, satanic beings, what they'll say is, we're darkness and we have to exist. Like, we have to exist for contrast, or we have to exist for didactic reasons, like to teach you lessons, blah, blah, blah. And I totally don't agree with any of that. All of those turds, they'll be like, we have to exist. I'd be like, no, actually you don't. Flush. You don't actually have to exist. If this was truly a didactic realm, all of the rules of the cosmos would be enforced to the point that those turds could not be in existence. That's the point. They are in the embodiment of an aberration, a breaking of the rules. They're breaking the rules just by being in existence. So for them to say, we're teaching you wonderful lessons, like, no, you're not actually. You are breaking the rules of everything that we're supposed to be learning by being in existence. So please don't try to justify your existence by saying that you're teaching us anything. Okay. This is interesting. Dominic is saying they found recently the pyramids produced electromagnetic energy. We're going to get into pyramids when I start talking about star tetrahedron in level 2. So let me move on to level 2. I'm being really good, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's been watching level 1. And again, I'm going to encourage, I'm totally not a salesperson, but, please enroll in the actual, access the recorded lessons. If you watch the recorded lessons, and this is true for everyone who's in this class, and they're like, oh, Laura, I watched that lesson, and then I watched your lecture, and everything actually made sense. Everything will make more sense when you watch the actual recorded lessons. So yeah, so I always leave the enrollment links in the description. There are some lessons enabled for free preview. I would say check out the lessons for free preview, and also enroll, and if you need help to be able to afford the tuition, just contact me, and it's really worth it. So thank you very much on that.